Bird here at Bird Surf Shed, and today we're going to talk about some really cool things. Number one, I want to talk about the Cosmic Creek contest. That's going to be happening June 3rd and 4th up in Salt Creek area. It's, as it sounds like, it's cosmic. You have your choice of riding either vintage twin fins or vintage single fins in your heat. And the way you get to pick out a board is you draw a card, and whoever has the highest card or whatnot gets to pick the board he wants. So it's a retro soulful event, 100% fun. So if you're anywhere up Salt Creek area on the 3rd and 4th of June, you should check it out. So in preparation of that, I'm going to actually surf in the old Doggers heat on Sunday. So I pulled out a couple of boards that I'm going to take up there with me. So we'll start with this one. This right here is one of my favorite boards. It's a 2-owner board. We had it made when I worked with Castor. This was a custom board built for a guy. And finally, when he was done with his boards, he always kept them really clean shape. He came in and he traded them into me. So what we have here is a 510 Castor G-wing fish. The G-wing, if you look at the tail on it, you can see the appendage on there. And the G comes from Gary Goodrum, who was one of Bill Shaper's. This was an idea that they came across, or Gary came across, where you protruded the wing out. And it actually works really, really well. We still do it. Hank Warner does it on his boards that are called Star Tails. And then Larry Gephardt, local legend, we did some on some of our Stevie Lisses and some of our Skip Fry boards where we added wings after the fact. So that whole concept is legit and valid. Castor's build and workmanship is unsurpassed at the time. He was a local guy, San Diego born and raised, started off making boards in garages up in Mission Hills, then down to Mission Beach, went on to make surfboards for Olympic surfboards. And then from there, he graduated and started making Castor boards under his own brand. And then he got drafted. And when he came back from his Vietnam thing, he did not go overseas. Thank God he was able to stay within the country. And when he came back, it had all changed. It had gone from long boards to short boards. So he jumped right in at Challenger factory and basically ended up taking over that business and built Challenger surfboards for a number of years. And then he went on again to continue building Castors up until the time that he passed. His quality, again, was phenomenal. He was a very detailed shaper. Other than himself, I don't think he ever had more than maybe one other person building boards alongside of him. He used the best materials, had a neat little factory down in Sorrento Valley. All the pin line work is done on the hot coat, meaning that after the board is glassed, laminated, then you put the color on it, then you gloss over it. So what you get is what you see. It almost looks 3D. Super detailed, the little tiny, tiny pin lines that wrap the board, and the way that you're actually starting to use airbrush at a relatively early time in surfboard building and fading that colors in. Very, very detailed build on this board. Traditional Castor type of rails, of course we're using Clark foam, and you've got to use that. He carries over the color to the bottom, and then you can see on the bottom, again, just a equally popular kind of a design at that time. Tom Carroll had them on his boards. A lot of people had them. We call them swooshes, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it got tagged right here, and you know, we did a color match on it, period correcto. So that's the best you could do in the day when you weren't airbrushing. That's actually resin mixed with color to fix the nose or the rail there. It has an unusual fin system. This is Stanley plus Guinness with a fin system that was called Dovetail. And what it was is you could take any fin, you could laminate a base to it of kind of an acrylic base, I think it was, or something of that nature. And then you push these tabs down, slip the fin in, and then the tabs pop up, hold the fin in place. So it was a local San Diego box design. It found its way around the world in various different stages, but not too long. Again, because it was, you know, somewhat unorthodox. The board itself, V in the bottom into a slight concave, and then it has a little roll into the wings. The workmanship, as mentioned, he puts tail beads, which you do not see very often now. Roper will still do it. Dane Purley will still have it done. But you actually overhang the fiberglass, backfill it with resin, and let it pool in there, and then you cut the excess glass off and you sand it back. And what it gives you is a full tail bead all the way around the tail. Not only does that keep your tail from getting cracked up, but you can put that fine, precise line on it and the edge on it. You can see the thinness of the tail. Again, this is made specifically for stand-up fish or surfing. You know, it came off of Stevie List's design. Bill was an avid fan of Stevie, and it's got the typical list type of an outline, but then it gets creative moving into the tail and thinning it out. So this board, you know, is amazing. This is going to be the one that I will probably ride myself in my heat, and I look forward to getting back on it again. So that's an example. This board came around, probably about 78, 79. That's the build frame on that. I would suspect, judging by the boxes and the fact that it does have a plug, and then that color work is still done old school. Shortly after this time, or even at this time, people were already actually spraying on the foam, but it just would not give you that 3D effect. So it's pretty much a masterpiece in my opinion. And again, this is a custom board, but it's what Bill would do on any board. His stock boards were the same way. He would not let a board go out the door unless the fin on the board matched the color of the board or the color of the laminate. I remember sitting there looking at boards that needed to go out weeks, and he's waiting for Fins Unlimited, Obayashi, to finish making the fins because the fins had to match the color or it wasn't going out. That's just the way he was. So that takes care of the shortboard end of it. I can't talk about Castor without showing what I feel is probably one of the finest examples of any board that he ever shaped. This board was made for Daryl Diamond. Daryl Diamond is a legend in his own right. Used to be a driver for Clark Foam. He was the first guy to introduce me to Herbie's Astro deck. Actually came down when it came in rolls, and we cut out the templates and put them on our boards. But this was a special board made for Daryl Diamond, AKA Doggy. And again, Castor's workmanship is flawless. The thickness in the nose, the flow to the tail, the pin lines, again, very, very fine pin lines, most likely done by one of the Brummets. And again, the details, the thickness, the V in the tail, what we call a spiral V. When you look at the tail, it actually looks like the tail is coming up, flipping up. And that's a legitimate spiral V. That really helps get the board over rail to rail. He'll carry that V up, not too far, nice flat bottom. And then it actually, for this particular board, because it was made for somebody who knew how to surf and was going to ride it in some solid surf, he included a nose V in it as well, which really makes a big deal when you're surfing big waves and cutting through chop. Gives you a little bit of a lift. You can see the fine workmanship, the cut lines. This board is done in an opaque color. So back in this day, if you wanted a color board, they were going to either be a tint, which was a translucent color where you would mix it in with the resin and you could actually see the foam through it, or you could do an opaque where you would mix in a solid color resin, and then you can barely even see the stringer on this board. But you can follow the cut line of the board and you can see how exacting it is. These guys did not have machines or anything of that sort to cut the lines. They used a razor blade to cut the lines. And in order to get a line that straight and that clean without scoring the bottom of the glass job is pretty amazing in its own right. Yeah, I mean, this thing, super strong. It's got some weight to it, but again, it was built to last, and it was definitely ridden. It looks like it has never been ridden, but there's actually pictures of Daryl surfing the ranch on this board. And that guy was such a good surfer. I mean, you don't think of riding a board like this at the ranch. Daryl, he's going to ride whatever he's got, and he's going to rip on it no matter what. So, you know, he put it to good use down there. We'll go back to the fin. We were talking about Fins Unlimited, Obayashi, and you can check out that fin, which is a work of art in itself. It's an inlaid fin. You have wood on a thick foil fin. Thick foils were popular then. They slowed the board down, but it didn't matter because you were surfing away as a consequence and you wanted to control the tail from wafting out underneath of you. But it's actually hollow. So it's laminated, chambered, and then there's glass, wood, and then more glass on it as well. Attached, obviously, very securely. No leashes, because leashes are for dogs. That was our sentiment back when this board was built. The build date on this board is probably 74, 75, maybe 73, but right in that 3-year period, which again was Castor at his finest. I think everything was going solid for him. He had a young family. He had a great group of people working for him. He had young up-and-comers like Chris O'Rourke, one of the best surfers from the San Diego area, riding his boards along with quite a few other La Jolla individuals. He had good marketing to some major accounts on the East Coast. And he was never, like I mentioned, a giant manufacturer. He was just quality controlled and concerned. And if you've ever talked to anybody that ever had a caster, they'll pretty much tell you the same stuff I'm telling you. And if you didn't have a caster, it's only because you couldn't afford one or you couldn't get one. Pretty much everybody that I knew, that was kind of a goal to try to get a caster. Grew up in San Diego, like I said, you know, contemporaries with Larry Gordon and a bunch of the other guys are up here. His brother-in-law, Hank Warner, a master shaper on his own, came up through the Gordon Smith stable of shapers. And we still build caster surfboards in tribute to Bill and for his family. And we just write caster family on them, and we'll build you whatever you want. You want to go retro, fine. If you want to go modern, fine. Hank's a master. He channels Bill through his hands in his planer. He has his own way of shaping, but when he knows it's a caster, I kind of think personally Bill kind of taps him on the shoulder and says, hey, this is the way I want it done. And it transcends his hands. And I mean, the boards come out next level. You know, there's a definite difference between the look of a Hank Warner and a caster. And that's a good thing. You know, that's a sacred thing. But super proud of this board. It's in my top 5. I've got about 1,500 boards, but this is definitely in my top 5 boards because of my relationship with Bill. He was an idol to me. Then he was a partner with me in Winnesea Beach and Surf, and ultimately good friend and mentor. So super stoked to be able to share these boards with you guys. We're going to have at least one of them, mainly that little fish, up at the Cosmic Creek. Hope to see you guys all up there, because not only will you get to check out these boards, but every board at that place that's going to be ridden is going to have a story about those boards. And I'm sure Eric Diamond or anybody up there will be able to fill you in on quite a few different ideas on those boards. Here's a side note. If you're up there and you've got a classical board that you want a little bit of information on, maybe you want to bring it down and let some of the guys talk it up, give you some information on it. I'm going to be there all day Sunday. I've got pretty good knowledge on a lot of boards. I mean, I got 1,500, so I've got some good backstory. And if you want, I can take a look at your boards if it's cool with the guys. I'm not going to bust in on their parade, but you know, we can just talk surfboards, because that's what we do, because that's what we love.